Translate everything within 30 minutes, please. The CEO's daughter and a confident female manager. Maggie, a highly educated woman who graduated from a prestigious Japanese university, said while shoving some Japanese documents at me. A disdainful smile was on her face. Just so you know, giving you 30 minutes is quite generous considering your abilities. If it were me, I'd do this in 3 seconds. But in the next moment, she was left speechless. I had started translating the documents effortlessly right then and there. My name is Nate Williams, 40 years old. I've been working for an apparel company since my late 20s. When I first joined, the company only had a headquarters, but in a few years, it grew rapidly. Now, it has branches in major cities. For the past 10 years, I've been traveling around, working in different regions to help expand the business. The company's name is Heritage Clothing Company, and it started as a local traditional attire shop. However, as time went on, traditional American clothing became less common in everyday life. Additionally, with the industrialization of the apparel industry, clothes could be made easily and cheaply, causing many traditional clothing shops to close down. Not just traditional clothing, but now inexpensive clothes made in overseas factories are all the rage. Initially, the current CEO had no intention of taking over the family shop and worked for a major apparel company with many factories abroad. However, at some point, he realized the importance of American heritage and decided to take over the family business. However, continuing in the same old ways would have led to the shop's closure. To make traditional clothing more accessible and a part of everyday life again, the CEO launched various new ventures from a completely different perspective. Especially in the early days of the company, it was tough. But with the effort and ideas of the founding members, the company grew into one that not only deals with traditional clothing, but also sells made in America household goods and operates American restaurants and cafes. However, rapid growth also brings risks. Hiring many staff can lead to insufficient training and deviations from the CEO's business philosophy. I've worked hard for the past 10 years to prevent that from happening. You've been a reliable partner from the start, so I won't give you detailed instructions. Convey the company's philosophy in your own words. I was happy when the CEO said that to me. So, traveling around for 10 years didn't feel like a hardship at all. I actually enjoyed my work. And recently, when I was told to return to headquarters because we were expanding overseas, I agreed without hesitation. Understood. I'm looking forward to being back at headquarters after so long. But at that moment, the CEO hesitated a bit. I'm counting on you. Is something wrong, sir? I asked, concerned. Actually, my daughter Maggie has been the manager of the new overseas business department since last month. You'll be working with her. Hearing that, I was happy. The CEO had always wanted his children to appreciate American culture. If I remember correctly, she graduated from a prestigious Japanese university and worked for a company abroad, right? It's an honor to work with her, but I soon found out why the CEO had hesitated when I returned to headquarters. Dad told me to learn from you, but what can I learn from someone who graduated from a low-ranking university in the States? That was Maggie's response to my first greeting. Her harsh words from a woman in her 20s made me smile wryly. No, it's presumptuous to say I'll teach you. Of course, I'm hoping to learn from you, so please guide me. Hearing my words, Maggie smirked triumphantly. Glad you understand. So, can you handle some errands for me? I was put in charge of the overseas department, but there's so much to do from scratch. I'm sick of all these chores. I nodded. Understood. Maggie's strong-willed attitude wasn't directed only at me. The overseas business department is run by members in their 20s and 30s, except for me, and Maggie's high-pressure attitude was directed at almost all of them. Hey, Steven, what's with this proposal? Even students could come up with something more interesting. Plus, it's hard to read. You rely too much on translation software, and it sounds unnatural. Maggie's yell echoed through the office. The one being scolded was Steven, who had just joined the company as a new graduate. By the way, new employees are required to create a proposal in Japanese every week and submit it to Maggie. It must be tough to create proposals while still learning the regular tasks. I'm sorry, I'll redo it right away, Stephen said as he hurriedly took the documents and walked away. Maggie called after him. Forget that proposal. Think of a new one. It's not worth redoing. Thinking this was too harsh, I decided to speak up to Maggie. I'm the only one who has been with the company for a long time and the oldest one here. I felt that if I didn't step up, the younger members might get discouraged. After a while, I approached Maggie. Boss, can I talk to you? When I called out to her, she answered without looking up from her phone. What? If you have something to say, make it quick. Following her instruction, I kept it brief. Stephen is still learning the job. It's too early for him to be making proposals. Maggie glared at me. Excuse me, you're just a gopher, aren't you? Stay out of it. Or do you think you can come up with an interesting proposal? Yes, I do have a few ideas. Oh, please. You've only worked in the US. What ideas could you possibly have? Besides, the proposal has to be in Japanese. There's no way you can do it. Maggie smirked. You won't know until I try. You just want to slack off from your chores by making a proposal, don't you? Fine, do this then. She shoved a document towards me. Translate all of this in 30 minutes. Got it? It was an entire document in Japanese. By the way, 30 minutes is very generous considering your pace. I could do it in 3 seconds. But the next moment, Maggie was left speechless. I began to fluently translate the document into English on the spot. After finishing, I handed the document back to her. Maggie took it with a surprised look and read through it herself. Then she looked at me in disbelief. I can translate a document like this in 3 seconds too. Yes, I graduated from a university in the US and have worked here my whole life, but that doesn't mean I haven't been using Japanese. My mom was a returnee, and I went to a Japanese school. A Japanese school? She exclaimed in surprise, and I nodded. My mom wanted me to be equally proficient in both English and Japanese. She believed that in the near future, most young people would go abroad to study. She thought I should have a solid grasp of Japanese for that time. I remembered my late mother in her traditional dress. Having lived abroad from a young age, my mother tried to adapt to American culture after returning. She learned how to wear traditional clothings, studied arts, switched to eating American food, and tried to be more American than those who had lived in the States their whole lives. She made these efforts to be accepted by her mother-in-law. However, this strictness made her stand out instead. To blend in as an American person, she only needed to refrain from asserting herself, but she didn't understand that. Eventually, she couldn't continue living in the US or maintaining her relationship with my father, and she left the US again. Nate, you're gonna come with me, right? During the divorce talks, my mom asked me, then a middle school student. She seemed to imply that she had sent me to a Japanese school for that reason. Stop forcing your ideas on Nate. He has his own thoughts and will need to become independent someday. For that, he needs to think carefully about which path to choose. Upon hearing this, my mom shouted with an intensity I had never seen before. What are you thinking? I raised Nate all by myself. You used your work as an excuse not to come home, so don't act like you're his father now. It was true. Dad was rarely home. As an executive in a large corporation, he was always busy with business trips, golf outings, and client dinners. Mom practically raised me on her own. That's why I felt indebted to her and thought I should stay by her side. But the words that came out of my mouth were the exact opposite. I'm gonna stay in New York. I remember Mom bursting into tears at that moment. Even now, I still think that was my honest feeling. Mom's expectations and hopes had become a burden to me. Why? Nate, don't you care about Mom? No, Mom, that's not it. All I could do was mutter while rubbing my neck in front of my sobbing mother. Huh, Mom? What are you talking about? When I snapped back to reality, I saw Maggie staring at me with a puzzled expression. Oh, sorry, it's nothing. Anyway, I'll teach Stephen the ropes. No matter what you say, the CO, your father, has instructed me to take care of the international department. With that, I turned away from Maggie as if to escape. Since then, Maggie had stopped telling Stephen to prepare project proposals and hadn't shown any overt hostility towards me. But one day, the CO called me in about Maggie. Maggie says she wants to quit the company. As you probably know, she's always been strong-willed, like her mother. She never listened to me as a child. But she's smart. She never accepted things just because adults said so. Yes, she's very stubborn and always points out valid issues. I think she's trying to say what's right. But people can't keep up with her. Maybe she's not saying she wants to quit, but wants you to choose between me or her? The CEO sighed and, with a wry smile, said, "Sharp, aren't you?" "Yes, Maggie wants me to choose between keeping you or her. She must really not get along with you. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe she's scared of being understood and is rejecting you because of it." My daughter is a contrarian. "So you were hoping I'd understand Maggie and help the international department thrive?" The CEO sighed again. It was the first time I'd seen him sigh so much. He was always a confident, charismatic leader who inspired his employees. "You must think it's pathetic, huh? That I can't even manage my own daughter. But honestly, I've found being a father much harder than running the company. Because my employees, especially you, have always listened to me and worked hard for the company." The CEO's expression returned to a smile. "I've been fortunate." I didn't know what to say, seeing the CEO like this for the first time. I felt that no matter what I said, it wouldn't solve the problem. If there's one thing I could do, it would be to talk to Maggie. "Please give us a chance to talk, the three of us. Let's discuss until we're both satisfied about who should leave." "Okay, I'm relieved to hear that. But I have no intention of letting you go. This is just to convince Maggie. The company exists for the employees. If she can't understand that, I can't keep her here." The CEO looked a bit sad. In his expression, I saw a resemblance to my father silently watching my mother leave the house long ago. "I finally destroyed our family. I'm sorry, Nate. This wasn't my intention." Saying that, my father apologized to me. I felt an unbearable pain and looked away. I only lived with my father for 4 years, until I entered college. Even then, he was still busy with work, so it was almost like living alone. Occasionally, a neighbor lady would come over to help with chores, but as a teenager, I didn't talk much with her. After Mom left, I became very quiet. The only people who actively talked to me were my friends from Japanese school. Having gotten used to the freedom of Japanese school, I couldn't fit in at the all-American public high school. I only hung out with friends with whom I could speak casually in Japanese. I began to want to go abroad someday, on my own terms. Besides, I thought that if I went abroad, it would make Mom happy. I was planning to ask my father to let me study abroad when I entered college, but then I heard the news of Mom's passing. No, it wasn't just that. I also found out that she had remarried a new man at the same time. Knowing that, my desire to attend the funeral vanished like a candle flame being blown out. "Nate, you should visit your mother's grave. Her husband wants that, and most importantly, she herself would want to see you." But I shook my head. "No, I'm not going. Besides, I don't think she really wants to see me." "Dad, you saw how she cried back then, right? How can I face her now?" Dad didn't say anything to my words. Since then, even when we saw each other in the house, we acted like strangers. A few days later, I was invited to the CEO's house. Maggie and the CEO's wife, Emily, were there, and she welcomed me with homemade cooking. I was planning to have a serious discussion, but I was surprised by the warm welcome. The CEO said his wife was strong-willed, but she was actually a kind woman who was considerate in many ways. However, Maggie sat at the dining table with a stern face. "Maggie, if you keep making that scary face, it will be rude to our guest, and the food won't taste good." Emily's words softened Maggie's stern expression a little. It seems she listens to her mother. "Please help yourself. It's been a while since we've had a guest." Thanks to Emily, I was able to relax and talk. The conversation around the table was not about someone quitting the company, but more like a casual family chat. After that, we moved to the large hall and talked while drinking. Finally, I had the chance to talk directly with Maggie. She talked about her time working overseas, still with her usual aloof expression. Over there, academic background is valued more than in the US. But no one acknowledges you just for your academic background. If you don't have the skills to match, no one pays attention to you. In that sense, the US, where you get pampered just for your academic background, is kinder. From her tone, I could tell she had a hard time. Your mother said you were a returnee, so it must have been tough. The culture and values are completely different, and you have to adapt. Yes, I tried to adapt. But eventually, it didn't work out, and she divorced my dad and went abroad again. But she found a new family there and was happy in the end. Maggie put her glass down on the table with a surprised look. In the end, your mother passed away? Yes, from illness. When I was in college. Actually, she had been ill since she was in the US. But she kept it a secret from me and my dad. The fact that my assertive mother didn't tell us about her illness weighed heavily on my heart, making me feel unworthy of calling myself her son. Sometimes I regret not going with her back then. Maybe she could have lived longer. The length of a person's life is something only God should know. I couldn't understand what Maggie meant by those words. She just said it quietly, looking straight ahead. When I was working over there, some people looked down on me just because I was American. Most people didn't have such prejudices, even if they thought it secretly. But I'm grateful to those who did it to my face. It made me want to work hard in the US. So, why don't we work hard together? I seized the moment to say it. For the first time, she smiled without sarcasm and said, "I'm just trying to prove myself to those who look down on me. I don't intend to play at being teammates, of course. Besides, we're not playing, we're real teammates." She looked exasperated at my words, but didn't argue further. Watching us, the CEO had a calm expression. Maybe this eased some of his worries. I decided to work hard with Maggie and the other team members for the CEO's sake. A few days after the discussion, new personnel changes were made, and I was appointed head of the Overseas Business Department. This was because Maggie declined the position, choosing instead to support me as a risk manager, and we started moving towards our overseas expansion in earnest. One thing I want people overseas to understand is the spirit of America. While having a good fashion sense and a friendly appearance is important, if there's no genuine spirit behind it, it's just like selling a fake brand. With a cool expression, Maggie retorted to my argument. Abstract expressions like the spirit of America won't get through to them. Even if you ask an American person what the spirit of America is, you'll rarely get a decent answer. Everyone has a different opinion. You need to express it more accurately. Our heated debate drew in Stephen and the others, who started actively participating in our meetings, often leading to interesting ideas. Through asserting ourselves and recognizing each other, new values emerged, expanding what we needed to do. The Overseas Business Department was reborn as the most vibrant department in the company. I got a call from my father for the first time in a while around the time it was decided that the Overseas Business Department would open Western-style cafes in Japan and China. It had been years since I last heard from him because we had become estranged after he remarried and started a new family. "Nate, how have you been?" Hearing my father's voice after so long, I was surprised at how frail it sounded, like that of an old man. Though, to be fair, he's over 70. So it's not strange for his voice to sound old. "I'm good. How about you, Dad? What's up?" When I asked, he said something unexpected. "Your mom appeared in my dream recently. She never did that before, but suddenly she was there, in her traditional dress from those days. It got me thinking, so I called you. My mom had never appeared in my dreams either. I always thought she wanted to forget about us, and I hoped she did. I thought maybe she came to take me with her." "What are you talking about, Dad? Don't say such ominous things." "No, it's not an ominous thing. My time's almost up. the doctor told me. So she might really have come for me. But then again, she'd never forgive me. After all, I took her son from her. I realized my father had been carrying guilt all this time. I don't think there's anything we could have done for Mom. You're right. At least I can't do anything now that I'm bedridden. But you can. Could you visit her grave and apologize for what I did? Why are you saying this now? But my father pleaded, please. Just as I was scheduled for a business trip to Japan for our overseas expansion, I realized that the city wasn't too far from where my mother's grave is located. Although it's not close and would take some time, it might still be possible to visit her grave. After some hesitation, I talked to Maggie, who was going on the trip with me. Without even thinking, she replied, "Of course you should go." I think it's strange for anyone to tell you not to go after hearing that. Are you okay though? Considering your dad's prognosis. Maggie suddenly looked worried. I'm not too shocked about my dad. He seems to have accepted his fate. Okay, but don't overdo it, alright? We all have the strength to support you. Hearing those words, I couldn't help but smile. Hey, what are you smiling about? She asked, looking puzzled. I tried to suppress my smile and put on a serious face. No, it's just that you've really changed, Maggie. I think everyone would follow you if you were the manager now. She frowned and replied, but from experience, I knew that she was more embarrassed than angry. What are you talking about? I'm planning to become the CEO of this company someday. I'm not interested in a manager title. Though her voice sounded angry, she was smiling. Just like the boss said, she's a contrary person. Hey, why don't you come over this weekend? My mom keeps nagging me to bring you over. She seems to really like you. I think she's happy because she always wanted a son, and you coming over makes her feel like she has one. Normally, I would have said, Maggie, you're quite the tomboy, but I hesitated. It didn't feel like the right thing to say at the moment. Maggie, let's just the two of us next time. I took a brave step towards Maggie.